So how to find a black cat in a dark room? Or more importantly, what if you have got a cat allergy and want to avoid it? It comes down to the psychology of intuition, influence, decision making and trust. Let me tell you a bit more. Did you know that everybody only has a finite amount of willpower each day, and the more decisions we make, the more it actually depletes. So therefore, crucially, use your willpower wisely. And just remember, you may actually make the worst decisions towards the end of the day and just give in to your vices. Perfectionism can sometimes serve to actually drain your willpower because you're putting too much effort into something and thinking too much about it instead of just you saying that's fine. Now hope, this is a significant part in many of our lives, and hopefully you've all got hope because it's important. And when we have positive feelings about the future, then we're actually likely to put more effort in to achieving success, putting that required effort in because you've got hope. And really what we want to aim for is a combination of desire and direction, and that will allow you to have optimal achievement. So what should you focus on, you may ask? Intention or outcome? Well, really it depends on what it is, what the project is, are you involved or not? Because if you think of, say, a spaceship landing, then you're focusing on the outcome. Does the spaceship land or not? That's the mission. However, if it's personal goals, you often don't have the actual ability to control the outcome. But what you can control is your intention, putting in intentional effort. And it's worth thinking about that. And particularly in sports, for example, if you can focus on your effort and your technique, then over time you can have significant improvements. Whereas if you're just focusing on the outcome, you won't improve because you may think, I'm really good at this, but you're just playing people who aren't world class, you see. And a similar thing, if you want to bring in parenting, if you've got children and you only raise them by praising them when they do something successful, then unintentionally you may give them this outcome focused reference in their mind to think that's how they should be, rather than thinking you've tried hard, you've put a lot of effort in, praising that intention, which can then potentially foster long-term growth and success. Now humility, this is a desirable trait, and it can be very challenging to measure because it involves having an open mind and recognizing that there's always something to learn. And if you approach people with arrogance, it's worth deliberately trying to stay grounded and humble and increase your humility, because at the end of the day, your successes may have been just due to luck. Now there's this statistical concept called the regression to the mean, and that's when you have a large or a small measurement, and then when repeated, the measurements tend to be closer to the average, the mean. And that can sometimes happen in life. Somebody has a success, so they think, I'm brilliant, and they're actually grandiose, and then they had chance, and chance went in a good way for them. Fantastic. But it means that the next things they do are not going to continuously be better. There's obviously some outliers out there, but there's this optimum equilibrium between egotism, and that will actually help you. If you can get the right amount of egotism, then you can keep helping yourself and helping other people, which is extremely important. Our perceptions can be influenced by preconceived notions. Now there was a study done on students prior to a lecture. On a passing note, students are good to study because they tend to all turn up and fill in the forms you give them. But prior to a lecture, half of these students were told, this lecturer is cold. The other half were told, this lecturer is warm. And then afterwards they provided feedback, and they found that the feedback provided to what they were told the warmer lecturer was actually more generous than the feedback that was obtained regarding the cold lecturer. The fact is, both lots of students watched the same lecture. So the aim is to try and be warm, and that's being a kind of nice person and competent. If you're cold yet competent, then you can get along, but people won't really like you. And if you're a warm character but incompetent, people will tend to feel sorry for you. Flawed evidence. Now this is quite interesting, because if an expert is told something, that also alters their preconceived notions, and therefore it may impact upon their analysis. So it's important to know this. And equally, if a witness sees a weapon at a violent crime scene, they're actually less likely to obtain positive ID identification in an ID parade. Now, interestingly, talking about ID parades, the witness is less likely to accurately select the perpetrator if they're shown all of the possibilities at the same point, as opposed to being shown each suspect individually. I have fond memories of an ID parade. As a child, I used to volunteer, and they would give £10 to turn up and stand in a line, which was very exciting. Now, let's talk about feedback. Giving or receiving feedback. Some people are described as hawks. These are very critical people, whereas others are described as doves, positive people. Now, generally, a hawk will provide their points much more strongly. So just remember, when you're giving or receiving feedback, that people are different, and you don't want to be too hawk or too dove. I don't know what bird that would make you. Feel free to comment below with suggestions. The Matthew effect. Now, where those who excel continue to improve, while others struggle to catch up. And this is from the Bible. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But for him that hath not shall be taken away, even that which he hath. Matthew 25-29. In essence, a rich person will continue to become richer, whereas unfortunately a poor person will continue to become poorer. And in the UK right now, with the rise in interest rates, that is unfortunately exactly what I think will occur. Now, equally though, it's not about money, it's about children again, and them learning to read. So those who are encouraged and will therefore are good at reading will then read more and become better. And there's this balance to be aware of. Now, completely changing the subject to bureaucrats and entrepreneurs. Bureaucrats tend to be risk averse, whereas entrepreneurs tend to be kind of thrill seekers, aiming to make the impossible possible. And bureaucrats, you'll often think, won't take action, but the way to make them take action is to point out the big risk that they will face if they do not take action. Let's move on and talk about the world and you as a unique individual. It's important to be unique and to be yourself, but also to be interconnected with others. There was a study done by a palliative care nurse looking at what people regret when they're dying. Palliative tends to mean in the last 6 months of life. And mainly people tended to regret not being true to themselves, doing what other people wanted, and not spending enough time with friends and family. And although you'll think, well, palliative thing, let's talk briefly about bereavement. It's stressful as well. And there was a study mentioned with baboons, and they could measure glucocorticoids, which if they increase, it's a proxy measure of stress. It's an objective measurement you can have. So what they noticed that baboons, who they could say they're affectionate with another one because they're grooming them and picking out the wee fleas, etc. If they lost a loved one, even a baboon's stress level shot up. Now that's not surprising, But I'll tell you the thing that is surprising. The baboons that stress levels went down fastest were the ones that were willing then to make connections out with the family. So to me, that shows that we must always be open to other people and to make new friends. And I suppose it's a concept about us and them. If you can think of other people as us, as opposed to them, you'll be able to get on better with them. But clearly, siblings exhibit rivalry. And what they found is that the first sibling is more likely to exhibit rivalry. But if you take a step back and think about what a rival is, sometimes a rival is somebody that has underlying behaviours that may sadly be similar to yours, or have behaviours that you don't want and you're trying to repress, and therefore you can think of that person as somebody that you're rivaling against. And that concept is at times referred to as your shadow. Individualism. Now, this does in part actually relate to the culture that we all grew up in. There was a fantastic study done about different countries, and it had America and Korea. And they were asked just to select a pen from a bunch of pens. Now, the Americans would tend to select the pen that looked the rarest to signify that they're the most unique, whereas the Koreans would tend to actually select the most common colour. Now, you could study this in many ways, but you could propose that Koreans are more encouraged to feel one as part of a larger group, whereas America and the West, I'm living in the West in Scotland, but we are potentially encouraged to think more of ourselves as an individual, which sadly does lead to narcissism and overly self-importance. A great measure that you could do if you wanted to measure individualism, this concept at a country level, is to just have look at the names. So if you look at the 20 most common names and add them all up as the numerator, and then the denominator, the bottom of the fraction, you have all the other names, you would see that in somewhere where there's a lot of individualism, that fraction would be a bit smaller because there's a large number of newly made up names that people are having, whereas if people have all got the similar names, then there's less individualism going on there. Now, the difficulty is that if everybody's to themselves, there's often a reduction in trust with our fellow human. And generally, that's not a good thing because then it leads to narcissism. If you can trust others, generally if you're given that, just give it 100%. Partial trust doesn't really work, and 100% trust is what I would say. So I'll trust in you all to share this with your friends. But at the end of the day, just do your best, and knowledge is power. So if you can seek to broaden your understanding of the human mind and behavior, it will help you get the most out of your life. I hope you like that. I'll see you next time.